Okay, so welcome to this session of the CET 12.0 QA Testing Guide webinar. So my name is Herng. I am a senior QA analyst located in the KL office. So this round of session, we will have two presenters. So myself and my colleague, Bryan. Right, so I will start off with my part of the testing guide, and then my colleague will continue with the rest. So to ensure a smooth presentation process, we recommend you to ask any questions that you have regarding this at the end of the presentation. So please do note down all the questions you have, and we'll answer for you later. All right, so before I start going through with the changes in CET 12.0, please take note on this. So first, please check with your developers if they've already done the migration changes on the extension before you start testing. And then second one, because with the new industry or addition introduced in CET 12.0. So please install your extension by turning on the relevant extension addition license only. Sorry, yeah. And you could turn off the other addition licenses via the developer center in My Configura if you are using the developer license. Yep. All right, so let's proceed with the 12.0 QA testing guide. So the first change I would like to say is about the changes in XCLIP. So developers have made changes to several classes, and they have incorporated the use of XCLIP black and white companion to support the grayscale image and PDFs. So referring to the screenshot shown on the right, so this one is taken from CET 11.5. So as you can see, we have here an image and a PDF report. So when you apply the black and white companion in CET 11.5, it doesn't change this view clip to grayscale. So this has been fixed in CET 12.0. So in CET 12.0, this bug has been fixed, and PDF and images that are within the 2D clip area will support the grayscale conversion. So as you can see here, this one is taken from CET 12.0. When you apply the black and white companion, it will turn this to grayscale. So what we would recommend you to check on your side is insert images, photos from PhotoLab and PDF into the 2D space, and then insert a 2D wheel clip of those, including those two, and add black and white companion in the wheel clip. So ensure that the images and the PDFs are converted to grayscale. And then try to remove the black and white companion and then add it back again to the wheel clip. Ensure that the grayscale reapplies to the image. And you can also try to toggle between the black and white and the view clip in the quick properties, and to ensure that grayscale apply to the view clip as well. Also, try to export PDF and make sure the images or PDF on the generated report retain in grayscale. So I would like to show you real quick in CET Designer how this would look like in CET 12.0. So I have here an image, and this is PDF. So let's go to paper view. So I have already here a view clip, and in my view clip I have the image and the PDF report here, yeah, which is in the 2D view. So what I will do here is apply the black and white companion to this wheel clip. So in CET 12.0, this will apply successfully and change the image and view the image and PDF in this wheel clip to grayscale. Okay, let's go back to the slides. So the next one is regarding the default columns update in the calculation dialog. So there has been a minor change to the default columns in the bill of material. So regardless of any extension, the part number and quantity columns are now mandatory. So to test this out, using your own manufacturer extension, construct a simple drawing with snapper with price, and then ensure that part number and quantity are present in the default article view in the bill of material. And also don't forget to load old drawings saved in previous CET versions. And also make sure that these two columns are showing in the default article view. All right, next one is regarding changes in Abstract Office. So there are some code refactoring done to this Abstract Office in which older classes or systems have been moved to a legacy packages. So as mentioned in the bracket, this is CM Abstract Office Legacy. And to ensure that there are no errors when running your Office extension, you could perform smoke tests on your manufacturer extension and make sure to pay attention to these areas. So the first one is make sure that there are no crash when clicking on the snappers. And then the snapping and stretchings with both panels and non-panels, meaning work surfaces and the other accessories or storages is working. And then also work surface and storage snapping. And the next one, placing chairs on work surface, especially on curved ones. And also check that the elevations still looks correct. And if you have finished legend, make sure to check those as well. And also load all drawings with Office snappers and ensure the drawing loads successfully and the detail in bill of material does not change. Okay, with that, next I would move to the new features that will be available in CET 12.0. So first one I would like to say talk about is Mirror 2. So upon completion of 12.0 migration, Mirror 2 should be seen under Wall Drawing tab. So snappers in CET 12.0 can now be mirrored vertically, horizontally, and against the plane. And these mirror tools can be placed under manufacturer extension depending on preference. But one thing that I would like to take note is that the mirror tool right now, it does not work for all the extension. So do take note on this if you are trying out the mirror tool in CET 12.0. Next new feature in CET 12.0 is physical lights. So in CET 12.0, CET will convert all lights to physical lights automatically, including lights owned by partners. So this automatic conversion will work on most of the time, but sometimes sometimes the manual conversion is needed if the lights look odd. So using this, light intensity in lumens can be physically corrected. And with using physical light in CT, so this is our progress or one step closer to perform photorealistic rendering. So as mentioned above, physical and non-physical light can't coexist together. So it is best to identify the problematic lights and let your developer know so that they can convert them manually. Okay, before I go into the test instruction, you can see that there's two screenshots here. The one on top is taken from CT 11.5 and the one at the bottom is taken from CT 12.0 with physical light. So you can see that the distribution in this is much more uniform and natural. So if you are testing this, if your extension has lights, make sure to complete the 12.0 migration before you perform this test. So if your migration is successful, follow the following test instructions. So before starting with testing with your light extension, make sure you have a drawing with a closed environment. Recommend with 4 walls and a ceiling. This is to prevent any other light source from entering. And using your light extension, toggle enable real-time lights on and off. Ensure that the lights projected from your light snapper are realistic. And for each light symbol, you can toggle the brightness and make sure that it works in light settings. And you can perform a quick render and make sure that the materials, texture, and the lights shown is correct and realistic as well. You can also try this in PhotoLab, and you can switch to advanced setting and also play around with the lighting and shadow. So over here, this is another picture of the rendering in CT 12.0. So as you can see that over here, the rendering looks a lot more realistic, and especially the lightings distributed from the floor lamp. All right, so this concludes my part of the presentation. I will now pass it to my colleague, Bryan. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Herng. I'm Bryan, okay, QA analyst in the KL office. So I'm going to be starting with the second half of the QA testing deck. Let me just share my screen real quick. Can you see it? Yeah?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to be starting with the first part, all right, which is the code changes. Now there are changes in core, and this allows CET to improve the support parent and child snapper concept. Now in future, CET 12.0 will support parent and child snappers, okay, for future extensions. Now you can look at this example right here. It's an example of a material handling project. Now we have beams and we have load units, right? Now the load units, they are now can be segregated as child snappers, and the beams can now be the parent snappers. So what is actually the use of doing this, right? So with child and parent snapper concept, you have the flexibility of being independent, right? For example, stretching the load unit, it will not affect the parent snapper. It can be placed as a freestanding snapper in the drawing. Like I said, stretching, it does not really affect the parent snapper anymore. Now, previously in CT 11.5, the child and the parent snapper, they are considered as one one whole snapper. So with that, there should be some concern on the performance, right? Just imagine you have 10,000 snappers in a drawing. It's going to put quite a lot of stress on CET. Now, with this concept, the backend does not require to load parent snappers anymore when you're manipulating the child snapper. Okay, so this is an example of a material handling project, right? You have the load units that's considered as child snapper, and the beams, they are considered as the parent snapper. Now, this is also another example that I have, all right? So this is actually from an ongoing material handling project in CET that utilizes this concept. You can see how the purple units, they are actually the load units. And when you hover over, you can see this two-tip. It kind of shows you what it means. Now, the parent is actually referring to the beams. MH test level snapper is considered as the parent snapper, right? Now, this is the child snapper. It's for the load units. Now, in CET 12.0, there are no parent and child snapper extensions just yet. So the testing is to make sure that the code change to support this feature, it does not reflect negatively in 12.0. Now, I'm going to be going through some of the test instructions just to make sure this support as a result of the code change works fine for all of you. Now, after you have migrated to 12.0, you will need to test the properties box dialog of your extension. Ensure that the UI of the animation property and the quick properties, they are the same as before. Then you can toggle through different options, okay? Make sure that they can be applied through both AP and QP. Then you change options related to pricing. It should always reflect in calculation dialog, which we call it bill of material, BOM. And you can try to change different materials and make sure it reflects in both 2D and 3D. And it's also really, really important to make sure that the sequence or the position of your properties and the options, they are the same as before. Okay, there should not be any changes in terms of sequence. And another thing you like to check is you can try positioning and arrangement tools just to ensure it works with your extension. Okay. Now, the second thing that's changed in core, it kind of affects with the performance of saving your drawing. Now, this happens in a good way because it improves the performance of saving your drawing, right? So this change in core, it allows you to file mirror a lot quicker than before. Now, in case if you are new to this, you can try file mirroring. You can go to Control Panel, Security, File Mirroring, right? Then you can ensure that it saves the same copy, but in a separate file path. It really depends on your configuration at the instance of saving a drawing. And you make sure it is at a satisfactory performance, right? There shouldn't be any slowdowns, or it shouldn't be slower than 11.5. Now, file mirroring is just one of it. Another thing you could try is to remotely save your drawings in a different location, all right? Now, if you're working from home, you may have the infrastructure, you have VPN, you could try to remote save on a network location. But if you do not have the infrastructure, you can try to save your drawing remotely to a different folder, for example. You can try to change this from a default path to another file path, right? Then with that, please make sure that there are performance improvements over 11.5. Okay, there shouldn't be a slowdown or if you're sluggish when comparing to 11.5. Okay, next up, we have a new general CET export. So this one is introduced to replace project matrix CET. Now, in case if you are new to this is actually order export format, right? If you go to BOM, bill of material, you can actually try order export by exporting all of your article views into a certain format. Now, this is what we have in 11.5, which is project matrix CET. Now with the new one, it works for all manufacturers, and certainly there's some improvements to it. This is what you'll be seeing in 12.0. Now in 12.0, we have a new format that's that will be replacing Project Matrix CIF. This is what we call Configura CIF. Now this format is compatible with most applications that use CIF, right? Make sure you are seeing this in 12.0. Now, how do you make sure that it works for your extension after you've migrated? You could try using a drawing. You open up your material, POM. You can either use a default or a custom article view. That's really up to you. All right. You can perform an auto export of Configura CIF format. You ensure that the process does not crash and is successful. Now, moving on, we have the DOCOTIC PDF library. Now, this one pretty much controls the PDF import and export in and out of the CET Designer. But in CET 12.0, it has been upgraded from 5.6 to 7.5. So with that, you have to make sure all of the PDF import and export throughout CET works just fine. Now, we have some test instructions that you can follow. Right, you can drag any PDF file into 2D and 3D in model space. Now make sure the PDF import dialog opens up and lets you insert either pages or images, and ensure that the import process does not crash. Another thing you can try out if the PDF import export works well or not, you could try using QA tools. Now, this would require you to have QA2's license, but if you have it, you can try to perform a PDF diff test just to ensure that the import of PDF when creating references or running batch tests loads fine. Okay, so these are the two most recommended ways to test if PDF import and export works fine in CET 12.0. Now moving on, I'll be showing you some of the new features, some of the great new features that we'll be having in CET 12.0. Now, the highlight of CET 12.0, we have new changes to schemes, all right? Now, this is a new feature. We call it embedded schemes. Now, with this, by saving or loading the drawing, it would include the embedded schemes, and there won't be a need of exporting or importing scheme files. So you can see right here, these two schemes, they have this chain icon over here. Now, previously in 11.5, what did you do? What do you do if you want to send this scheme over to your coworker? You can either export this as a separate CM scheme file, then your coworker would have to load it into scheme dialog. Now with embedded schemes, you can now tie your schemes to a drawing. Now, all you need is just one file, which is the drawing file, CMDRW, and it will include the CM schemes together. When you load the drawing, it will load these embedded schemes along with it. Right, so there are two ways to do this. It can be through automatic, and it can be done manually as well. Now, when you want to do it automatic, you just have to make sure that this toggle is switched on, all right? Then once you apply something into your drawing, it will be auto-embedded itself to the drawing. Now, another way to do this, it's manual. You can either click on this icon over here. It should be, it should show when you hover your cursor to it. You can click on it and you can embed your schemes to the drawing manually. Another way to do it is to right-click on schemes, any of these scheme tabs. Then you have the option to click on embed drawing, and that embeds your scheme to the drawing. Another thing that we've introduced is filter. Now you have the schemes that you can create. You also have schemes that are embedded to drawing. Now you have many types of schemes, right? So just imagine if you are coming from a manufacturing extension, you are working on a lot of schemes for different product lines. So we've introduced filters for you to summarize what you want to see and what you want to be hidden any schemes that you want to show and any schemes that you want it to be hidden, right? Now, there are 4 categories to this filter. If you click on all, it's going to be showing everything. Default, it's going to be showing the default schemes. Now, my schemes, it will be the schemes that you create in the instance of the same drawing, all right? So within the same drawing itself, you're going to be creating new schemes. These are considered as my schemes. Now, any schemes that's embedded to the drawing with this chain icons over here, it's going to be considered as drawing schemes. Okay, moving on, you now have the option to change the layout of schemes dialog. Now, here's what it looks like in horizontal. And you now have the option to change it to vertical. Okay, it looks something like this. Now, it has the same functionalities, but everything from the top here is being transferred over to this extra column. Now, what this allows, it allows you to have better visibility of your schemes when working on a really large drawing. Because when you create a lot of schemes right here, it's going to be like your Internet Explorer tab or your Google Chrome tab. It's going to be really messy right here. So with this, you can have a better visibility of your schemes when you're working with really a lot of schemes in your drawing. Okay, now with this, I'm going to be showing a short demo on how schemes work. Okay, so now I have CET 12.0 that's open right here. I also have scheme dialog open, right? Now this is what we'll be seeing, okay, in CET 12.0. Now I'm just going to be loading a drawing that I've created. Notice how these two custom 1 and custom 2, these two schemes, they are loaded along with my drawing. Now I can safely say that these are embedded schemes because they have the chain icon over here. Now I can create a new one like this. Now this is going to be my schemes. So this is the filter. All it's going to be showing everything. Default is going to be showing only default. My schemes, the one that I've created in the instance of this drawing. Drawing, it's going to be filtering out my embedded schemes, which basically means the schemes that are tied to this drawing. Okay, so I'm going to be showing how you can embed schemes automatically and manually. Okay, I'm going to be showing automatic. Make sure this is toggled on. Then I'll try to make a change. Let me have a different wall height value, right? 5.1. Okay, 5.1. Okay, now there's a change to it. Let me just make a new application over here. Okay, so now I place this wall into this drawing. Okay, and it is actually using the scheme that I've just created. Now up on the placement of this wall, and you can see how it's automatically embedded to the drawing. That is only when you have this switch on. Now, when you have this switch off, it's not gonna embed for me automatically. For example, I'm just gonna make this 3 meters, place another wall. It's not gonna embed for me. But I can manually embed this to my drawing by either clicking on this one, okay, now it's embedded, or I can right click and embed drawing. So these are the different ways of embedding your schemes to the drawing. Now, if I were to save this drawing, all of these schemes gonna be carried together with the drawing itself. It's gonna be embedded. So the next time when I send this drawing to my coworker, he or she opens it, he or she will get the schemes together with the drawing, right? So this is how embedded schemes work in CET 12.0. And you can click on this triple dot right here. You can go to settings. Now this is also something new, all right? And this basically controls how scheme dialog behaves. Okay, this one, it corresponds to this toggle. And with this dialog here, the scheme settings, you can change the different layouts like this. All right, this is vertical. This is horizontal. Okay, that's all for schemes. Back to the slides. Okay, so I've also included some test cases to test schemes. Now, to test embedded schemes, you can try by switching auto embed on, which is the toggle, all right? You ensure that the created schemes are embedded after an application, right? You have to put something in the drawing that uses the scheme. It's either by target selection or. These are the different types of applications. And when embedded, you can make sure that there's a chain icon on the scheme tab. When there's a chain icon, it means it's embedded. And when it's embedded, you can hover your cursor over to it, make sure the tooltip shows exclude from drawing. Okay, it's gonna be the other way around if we are gonna be testing non-embedded schemes. Now with this, make sure to save the drawing. By loading the drawing, reloading it back to CET, it's gonna be loading the embedded schemes together. And it's always important to make sure that the saved changes and the values to the properties, they are retained. Okay. Moving on to the third one, by switching auto embed off, which means you want to do manual embedding. Ensure manual embedding it's possible by clicking on the unchained icon on the scheme tab. That's one. Another way is to right click on the scheme tab, click embed to drawing. That's another way. Okay, so you can try if manual embedding really works for you by repeating step 2. Okay. No, that means you're gonna be reloading this drawing using manual embedding just to see it works together with the auto embed on. Works the same as the automatic embed, right? Ensure the changes, the save changes, and the values they are retained. As simple as that. Now moving on to the next test instruction. This is to make sure that your filter and your layout works just fine. You make sure that the following features work fine. Behavior is as follows. All is going to show everything. Default is going to be showing only default. My schemes is going to be showing only the user created schemes in the instance of the drawing. Drawing is going to be showing embedded schemes to the active drawing only. Okay, you can try switching to different layouts, horizontal, vertical. Now, after the transition, please always make sure that there are no missing tags, no missing products, and most importantly, no missing scheme properties. Okay, so another cool feature that we're releasing in CET 12.0, it's associative dimensions. So what's new? Dimensions can now be dynamically updated to match the new position of the associated snapper that is either repositioned, stretched, or rotated. Now you can see over here, it's going to be looping another time. Now, for example, if I were to place a table, another table, then I have my associative dimensions switch on, right? I snap it to these points right here. So when I reposition it, the dimensions will be dynamically updated. It updates itself. So this works by this works when you reposition, this works when you stretch, and this works when you rotate your symbols that's associated to it. I can show you a quick demo on this. All right. Okay, this is CET. It's gonna be using a new drawing. Okay, I'm gonna be using this symbol, all right? I have 2 of these placed in my drawing space. Then I go to this extension right here. I bring out my dimensions. Now, please always make sure if you are using associative dimensions, make sure that this feature in the AP animation property is switched on. Otherwise, if you have this toggle off, it's gonna be like the old dimensions, which is not associative. It will not update itself. Okay, I'm gonna have it switch on like this. Then I'm gonna be snapping to the points of the snapper. Now, you have to make sure when you're using associative dimensions, when you're about to snap to the snapper, please make sure that it's always highlighted in blue. Okay, that means the snapper is associated. Okay, now it is highlighted in blue. Now I'm just gonna be snapping to the other snapper. Okay, it's also highlighted in blue. That means it's gonna be associated. Okay, now that's done. And when you click on the dimension every time, to make sure it's associative or not, you make sure that there's this blue dot over here at both ends. That means it's associated. Now, when you reposition, it's gonna be updating the dimensions itself, like this. Or you can try stretching, or you could try rotating. It's gonna be updating the dimension itself. Personally, I think it's a very cool feature. Okay, so associative dimension, it works pretty much with most snappers in CET. Now, after you've migrated into 12.0, please make sure that it works within your extension. Now, using a dimension, make sure it's associative in the animation property, like what I've shown. Make sure it is checked. Then you snap the start and end points at two snappers. The associative snappers should be highlighted in blue. Now, ensure dimensions, they are dynamic, right? The updates itself when you move, stretch, or rotate the snappers. When you click on it, there should be a blue dot telling you it's associative. It's also associated to the snapper, right? Like this, the blue dots. And that comes to the end of today's webinar on CET 12.0 testing. Now, I've attached some links over here. I'm just going to be showing you this one. Okay, so in case if you didn't know yet, we've actually released this CET 12.0 QA testing guide on Help Center. It's pretty much more in details to what the presentation that's conducted today. It's more in depth, so you can have a read and make sure it works with your extension. All right. And below here, there are also some links that we've added. We think that it really helps when you're testing your CET after you have migrated 12.0. For example, you like to refer to the smoke testing guide. Okay, so you can top up some of your own test cases on top of what you are testing, the suggested test cases. So this is just guidelines just to tell you, hey, perhaps you could try doing this and that, some exploratory testing just to make sure that it works just fine. This one is QA tools. So if you need a recall on how to use PDF diff, or you want to use some of these QA testing tools, you could click on this link and there should be manuals that you can refer to. This is the release and migration best practice, right? So it's going to be telling you when should I migrate. This is more of like a guide that you should refer to while you're doing your migration. Okay, then you have release checklist as well. Okay, that's pretty much it. Does anyone have any questions? You can type it in the chat dialog box below as well. Yes, this video will be available online. Yes, there are recordings to this. Any other questions?
Hi, this is Emily.
Uh-huh.
I have a question about the change in the core with
Okay.
I think it's with the stretching, the components are handled differently or separately.
Oh, okay. You mean the child snapper concept? Yep. I'm gonna be going to the first slide.
Yes.
Yep, this one. Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time we have, for instance, panels,
Mm-hmm.
and then work surfaces attached to the panels,
Mm-hmm.
and they all match the width of the panels, so they stretch together. I think I'm going to have to do a lot of testing to make sure those work surfaces always stay with the width of the panels. Or is that going to be a separate option?
This one is actually optional. If you want to stick with the old way of stretching, that's completely fine. It's just, it's just something new that we've added into the core so that it supports this and you can use it when you need it.
Okay. Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not going to affect the stretching of work surface or panel if you do not want to convert it into a child snapper. No worries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your question. Okay, are there any more questions? Okay, I have a question in the chat dialogue. Any seminars aim more towards the extension developers during the migration? Okay, there's actually another webinar that's more developer centric. I believe that is for the 12.0 migration. Have you signed up for that class? There is actually another one that's more to the more for the developers, aside from testing.
I believe the session will be today.
After this, yeah. I think every one of you still have time to sign up if you want to. Where can I access to that link, Yuen? Can I go to Configura?
Yeah, you need to go to Configura.
Academy.
Yeah,
webinar.
Webinars, yeah.
CET developers. Yep, this is for the developer one, right? So it's more developer centric. And it tells you how can you do migration and what are the cool changes, things like that. Because the one you're seeing currently, it's more for testing. Now the next class is going to be starting at 9, so you still have time to sign up. All right, just click on register and yeah. Any more questions? Thank you, Emily. I received a compliment from Emily. Okay, it means so much to us. Thank you very much. Okay, are there any more questions? Okay, thank you, Jared. Thank you so much for the session. Thank you so much for the attendance as well.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
All right. Now, if you have any further questions related to testing, please send us a mail at QA support@configura.com. All right. We'll be more than happy to answer to your queries, assist you with the testing. Okay. Thank you, everyone. And that's the end of today's webinar. Bye-bye.